This video is about how Outperform Planning can handle capacity limitations in your supply network. When your business is selling products, these products need to be supplied. And the supply is a mixture of purchase and transport inside your network and production capacity. If you purchase materials, then you have limitations with your supplier, but usually if you announce it enough in time, then you can have the product. If you transport from within your network, it needs to be there. But if you produce product, then of course this claims production machines, claims available hours on those machines, and you need manpower to man these machines, and those elements are not in infinite supply. And Outperform Planning can help you to make a plan that navigates around these limitations. A little bit on the data. How does Outperform Planning know about capacity claims? Well, it knows for each product which are the machines it can be produced on. It knows which rates that is normally happening at and which efficiencies, and therefore if there is a need to supply 10,000 units and the going rate is 1,000 units per hour, Outperform Planning knows that this takes 10 hours. And once all the hours have been used up, you run into your capacity limitation. If I show that in the application, let me open Outperform Planning, login screen, and I proceed with the login. I get to the news page. Normally I would take a good look at all these news tiles and see if there's anything beyond what I would be expecting or what I would be accepting. But in order to speed up with this video, we go to the workbench and we're going to look at Dallas. I've already zoomed into the Dallas warehouse, and I see here the demand supply inventory projection of all the products, but let's take a look at the finished products. So I zoom in on F, and you see the regular gray inventory projection. The blue is the demand going out, the green is the supply going in, the darker green represents firm decisions, the light green represent decisions from the algorithm. And if I do that visually, I can see that my whole of Dallas and all my finished goods are basically planned supply equals demand. You can also see that in this representation where every green bar represents supply, the blue bars represent demand. You can see the supply is almost the same height as the demand, and therefore the projected inventory just follows the target line. I've also structured that a little bit in product groups. You can see here that there's a little bit more inventory. That's probably because the order size for the almond products is sizable against the demand, so therefore you have some order size fluctuation. And if you now go to the milk chocolate, for example, you can already see that at the end of the year the demand is quite high, and that represents the Christmas peak that we experience for chocolate. And the question now is, does that fit with capacity? To answer that question, let's take a look at the capacity utilization monitor. So I switch that one on as well, make some more space, and I can see here the utilization. I can still see the inventory balance monitor a little bit smaller, and if I scroll to the right, I can see that peak season is having quite a claim on the capacity, and you can see it is not it's not meeting the 100% limit. It's exceeding the 100% limit. So this is not yet, in terms of production capacity, a realistic plan. Now, what are my options to overcome this? I can produce earlier, provided that I have space in my warehouse to stock up the product, and provided that the shelf life allows for this. I can produce on a different line. I can eat into inventory and go below my target inventory. If all else fails, I can short the demand. I can decide that I won't meet the demand, or I could suggest overtime. And Outperform Planning is an application that can help you to analyze these decisions and pick the best one of them. There's also another slightly more elaborate report in the resource utilization area. That's basically a zoom out of this monitor, and let me show you that as well. And let's zoom in on the Jealous chocolate packaging line, and you can see, if you scroll to the right, there's some coloring that you're exceeding the 100% capacity. But what is also an interesting indicator in this report is the cumulative hours not used. You can see here that you use 65 hours out of a total available hours of 104, and that's why you have some spare hours. Again, you're not using up all of them, and therefore the cumulative not used hours increase. And as long as your cumulative not used hours over the horizon do not go negative, then you can always resolve your capacity bottleneck by pre-production, provided that other things like the warehouse capacity and your shelf life are not inhibiting this. But in terms of available hours across the horizon, you can always resolve your capacity bottleneck by doing things a little earlier. Now you can, of course, in the workbench, tune the decisions made by the algorithm, milk chocolate, and you can, for example, override this and reduce this to 1000, and then you can look in your monitor and you can see if things fit again. But that can be a rather laborious way of going about things, and therefore it's time to invoke or time to ask the algorithm for some help. And the place where you can do that is in the supply parameters report. And if I go to the supply parameters report and look at my parameters for Dallas, I see this column called constrained. And if I leave the nibs, because I purchased the nibs, but apart from the nibs, if I then set this to constrained and I save this, if I then consult my workbench again, what I'm expecting is a different picture. And let's see if that different picture is indeed materializing. It seems to me it is. And you can already see that in this area over here. And you can also see it reflected, maybe not so clearly, but you see that this gap is widening. And this gap is widening because the machine is anticipating the capacity bottleneck. And especially in the milk chocolate, you can clearly see this bulb here. And this all means stocking up so as to overcome the capacity limitation. Let's verify that with the capacity monitor. If I now scroll to the right, I can see that over here towards the end of the season, it's just flattening out to that almost 100% utilization. So the machine is making the puzzle for you and it's trying to fit things in, and where things don't fit in, it is finding another place to resolve it. Back to the master data on what supports this calculation. Again, we've already seen the supply parameters where you have the switch constrained or not constrained. If it is set to not constrained, then the system will observe rules like the calendar, rules like the lead time, rules like the order size, but it will not observe the overarching capacity limitations, and it will also not observe limitations in raw material supply. It will indicate how much raw material is needed. It will try to buy that with the purchasing supply policy, but if it's not there for reasons of a lead time or for reasons of a supply calendar, then it will just indicate the shortage and not let itself be limited by the shortage. But if I set it to constraint, all those limitations will be observed by the algorithm, and the algorithm will make the puzzle for you. Important in that arena are the resource details. The resource details indicating that all these products are produced on the Dallas chocolate packaging line against these rates, against this expected efficiency, and against this production cost. All the numbers are equal in this data set, but in real life you will have one machine doing it at a fast rate, like 300 units per hour, and another machine at a slower rate, 200 units per hour, and then you should expect the algorithm to first choose the fastest machine, and then if it doesn't fit there, pick a slower machine. Again, the algorithm is there to make the puzzle for you. The decision to go for a constrained plan will of course also have consequences in other places. And let's, for example, look at news and look at inventory exceptions, and then zoom into Dallas again. And you can see I have some 24 news items, and if I set it to unconstrained and I detect my news, I expect that I have fewer news items, fewer inventory exceptions, simply because it's easier to make the plan from an inventory demand and supply perspective. And let's verify if that indeed is happening. If I switch off the constraint and I go to my news, inventory exceptions, again Dallas and product code F, and if I detect, I start with 24, if I now redetect, I indeed will only get 10 news items, and that just indicates that unconstrained, the demand supply inventory balance is easier than constrained. But of course, you are in need of a plan that really fits, and you are in need in good information on when your capacity is too tight, when you need to budget for more manpower, and those are all aspects that Outperform Planning can help you with. I hope you enjoyed this explanation, and see you in the next one.